Well, happy Independence Day. You know what? I'll have to be honest with you. I was like you, probably just enjoying the day. It's a time that we have to just slow our lives down, which we could all use a little bit more of slowing down. You know me, I have a motto, slow down to go fast. But I don't even live by my motto because I'm constantly in motion. And that's what society seems to be these days, right? Uh, is that technology has engulfed our lives, consumed our lives. It consumes us. We consume it. And so to have a day where we can slow it down, pump the brakes, take some time to think about our freedoms, about what our nation stands for, about Independence Day. That's what I titled the show today. Why do we celebrate Independence Day? And I want to get into that, obviously, share a lot of things that have happened since Tuesday. But let me get back up a little bit here. So I was sitting watching Rumble on the big screen, and a gentleman who has a podcast, and I can't recall the podcast, but he had some technical difficulties on his podcast getting it launched today. And he talked about the fact that, here he is. He came into his studio, he left his family to do Independence Day, 4th of July celebration things like going to a parade. And he came into studio to prepare himself for his show. And unfortunately, they were having some technical difficulties, as I said. Um, and the show wasn't launching. So therefore, when you don't go off on time, unfortunately, especially if you have a larger audience or even a smaller audience, people will assume something's wrong and they're just not on today because it's a holiday and who does a show? Well, he was there to do a show. Needless to say, it did come back. Rumble came back. They were in communication with the tech people at Rumble, and his show went live. And he talked about why it is that he came in on Independence Day, the 4th of July, to do his show. And it really resonated with me because I will tell you, I have to be honest, I was about ready to hit the button to just put up another replay of Tuesday's show with Darren Bailey. But his reasoning and his rationale really convicted my heart. You know how it is that sometimes God speaks to you in so many different ways. I mean, we just went through a series at the Tabernacle Church, which you can join me at the Tabernacle Church if you're in the central Illinois area, specifically McLean County, the Bloomington Normal area, at the Tabernacle on Sunday at 10 o'clock, 1845 West Hovey Avenue. That's 1845 West Hovey Avenue. Just look for the roughly 16-foot white cross in front of the building. But his conviction was this. He said, can you even fathom? Because he couldn't. He hadn't gone through it. I have never served in our armed forces. I know people who have. I've had family members and friends who have. In fact, currently, I have newly, I have a son-in-law who will be heading off to serve our country in the Army National Guard in September. And he said about these heroes, our warriors, the people who have put it all on the line for us, that they are going to be in the mix of things, irregardless of what the holiday is, whether it's Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas, 4th of July. They don't take a holiday. They don't sit back at the poolside sipping a nice cold beverage. They don't enjoy beach volleyball or they don't enjoy the cookouts. They enjoy protecting and defending our freedoms, our country. And that's what it's about, is protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States. And so that's why I'm here. I came in, but not only did I come in, obviously here he is, there he is, the Ryan Mack of the Ryan Mack Show. Ryan Mack is in with us too. Ryan Mack.
Absolutely. I would not miss it today, even though it's a holiday. We could still join and get together, like you said.
Oh no, we do about an hour. Once again, I appreciate everybody that's already joined us here. at the DPB Show. You can do that at Rumble, YouTube, X, and Facebook, and like and subscribe, and definitely push this out, because it gets back to what we have hopefully encouraged you guys to realize, because that's what we're doing here. We're truly here for the sake, not for the sake that we're going to get big bucks today, because that's not happening today. Obviously, getting paid is not what it's about. No, taking vacations is not what it's about. This particular podcaster, he did say it best. I haven't said this, but I do believe this. We are, as the president of the United States says, I'm sorry, as President Trump says. See how that is?
Freudian slip.
Yeah, as our future president, former president, Trump says, we are a nation in decline. This particular podcaster was saying we're a nation at war. And do I believe we're in a civil war? By all means. A cold civil war. We find ourselves battling through so many different challenges to our Constitution. Namely, one of the things, Ryan, and I don't know, I was thinking about this on my drive in down Veterans Parkway. It's cool to live in a community where you have a Veterans Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking to myself, as you're hearing these speeches given by elected officials about Independence Day, there's a contrast and a definitive difference between those on the Republican side of the aisle and those on the radical left / Democrat side of the aisle. It amazes me that they talk about preserving democracy, never about preserving the Constitution.
Yeah.
Don't you find that fascinating?
Yeah, it is. I can't find the word democracy in any of the founding documents. I mean, there were letters that mentioned democracy, that it was the most hated form of government by the founders in its purest form. But here you have a modern party talking about not just preserving democracy, but expanding it.
Well, I have my Freedom shirt on today, Ryan. Obviously, his studio's decked out. There he is. He's got the Betsy Ross. Yep. 1776. So therefore, what better way to jump into something that I told Ryan I do every show so far, and this is the 4th year that I've done Independence Day shows. I always read from the Declaration of Independence, because once again, Ryan's going to bring some trivia here in a second about the 5 people that were part of the initial presenting of the Declaration so that it could go forth to be ratified by the 13 states. But the Declaration of Independence, action of the Second Continental Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station of which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Once again, think about this. We are a nation in decline. We are a nation in a cold civil war. We have people in elected positions who refuse to acknowledge the document, to refer to the document, to refer to our country as a constitutional republic. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all means all. ALL means everyone. No matter if you are human and you are a citizen of the United States of America, this applies to you. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of freedom. It actually says the pursuit of happiness. I've titled it in my description, The Pursuit of Freedom, because what is happiness without freedom? What is freedom without happiness? that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, destruction, nation in decline, I think we've reached this point.
Yeah.
Destructive, an open border, an out of control executive branch, making declarations and executive orders without any regard for the Constitution, the balance of powers, the other branches of governments. We'll continue to cover that. I'm sorry, I was just going on a
But
time.
notice when it said any form of government, not just certain types of government.
That's right, any form of government, even if it's one that now declares itself a democracy. It is the right. It is the right given by God, not by government, but by God, of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect this and safeguard or safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate the government's long established should not be changed for the light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. I won't read the rest of it. You guys you get the gist of it. You can go and Google the Declaration of Independence. But I wanted to get to that point because that's where we're at. That's where we find ourselves today.
I've got somebody that said it better than that, to be honest.
Okay.
He was really well versed before I get to the trivia.
Okay.
But you said it there, and what was important that the English back then was very hard to understand. So it's easy today to go back and read it and go, what are they talking about? But there's ways of translating the English of back then into more modern words and phrases. But I think there's important distinction when you read it. It becomes duty when government becomes out of control. And it's your right to abolish that government to create a new one that justifies the government that you need. And that's important. Nobody follows that today. Neither Republican nor Democrat. They weren't a part of any major party back then. They were creating a nation just starting out. And this is the government they left us. And it grew to an unimaginable, but they planned for it in their founding documents.
Yeah. Yeah.
But somebody
who did it better
could translate it.
Sorry, I had to send out a text message, but
somebody translated it very well into modern English. And I really couldn't have said it any better than that.
Uh-oh. I got to add to the stage. Oh, are you going to have to rewind him?
Here we go.
There you go. Pulling back. Right. Okay, here we go. Oh, my goodness. Joe Biden.
Here he is. Joe Biden. He knew.
Joe, let's hear it. Yeah, from his mouth, the horse's mouth.
From his mouth. Now, remember, this is not a cheap fake. This is actually a speech he gave during his campaign, but he translated it perfectly.
For America to back up on its feet and once again fight for the proposition that we hold these truths to be self-evident. Sounds corny. Not a joke. Think about it. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. You know how we talk about it. Are we the people?
We the people.
Endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights.
Inalienable. It's unalienable.
We've never lived up to that.
Unalienable.
We've never lived up to it.
Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the words, never lived up to it.
He never lived up to it.
Never ever before walked away from it.
What? What? We never before walked away from it,
That,
Joe.
that is his profound statement. Every time he gives a speech, he said, "We've never lived up to it, but we never walked away." What?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
We never lived up to it, but we never walked away from it. And we
Yeah.
never refer to it. We hold
I
these
don't
truths to
understand.
be self-evident.
You know the thing, the thing. We're creative. You know the thing.
My cool little display here. Hold on. I've made a mess of things, but that's all right.
Oh
I'll get
man,
it back
burning
up and going.
it down in the background.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness / freedom.
Yeah. And I want to note that the pursuit of happiness. So when I interviewed the congressman a while back from Utah, in his book, he talked about what he learned in Congress that he wished he would have taught and that wasn't taught in schools. That the idea that the pursuit of happiness. So happiness in itself wasn't something that they just wanted to give you. It's the pursuit that whatever you deem desirable and happy to you, that was the more driven goal was the actual pursuit, because happiness is different for everybody, and happiness in itself is not really a thing that can be given, but the pursuit was what their goal was driven for. So that was the key distinction as well.
Well, and I so appreciate reading that over and over again every Independence Day, 4th of July, because the interesting thing is, even though that they adopted this document back in 1776, they did not the founders didn't fully put it into writing until August of that year.
Yeah.
However, there's a reason we celebrate on the 4th, and that's when they finally came together and they all agreed, this is it. We are on board with this. It is go time. This is what's going to build this nation. And they said all. Now, in their wisdom at the time, yes, predominantly every person in the room of the Second Continental Congress was male.
Yeah.
And when they referred to man, obviously they're referring to both man and woman, because woman,
the language was just different back then. But they at the time of the writing, men who were able to vote were men predominantly white who had property and had those freedoms endured. But the language did not mean solely men.
And that's why Thomas Jefferson must not have lived up to it. But that's not true,
right.
Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, because we define a nation, the founding of a nation, the building of a nation, all means all men.
Yeah,
all
it's very inclusive. The document
all
was very
men
inclusive.
includes both men and women. Anyone who is a United States citizen. In fact,
citizen?
surprisingly, you do not have to be a citizen of the United States, which is crazy, to be afforded the rights of a citizen. Crazy as that sounds, you do still qualify for rights. Not taking, that's another show, another argument, another time, but it includes everyone. It's all inclusive. It is the epitome of inclusion. Because our country is, without question, has always brought everyone to the table. There is a seat for everyone at the table. Please don't tell me that there isn't a seat at the table for everyone. We have been, if we had our struggles, by all means. Now, granted, this current administration has doubled down on that and has put people into position, not because of merit, but because of who they are, how they identify. Whether they are qualified is irrelevant. I have no beef with someone in the United States of America who is a transgender person holding an office, if they are unequivocally the most qualified person for that job. I have no problem with a person who has a same-sex attraction holding an office if they are the most qualified person for that position. Rick Grinnell, under the Trump administration, is one of his highest level security advisors.
Wasn't accomplished because he was gay. Fact that you probably didn't even know he was gay until he probably mentioned or somebody else mentioned it as his part of his duties. That's how it's supposed to be in government. We're not supposed to know who you sleep with or who you are. It's your qualifications. If you're communications director, how well can you speak to the thoughts of the president every day at the podium? I don't care what your color of your skin is. Yeah, the press secretary. If you're a communications person in the White House and you're leading the responses of the president in the meetings, you should probably know what he's thinking on a daily basis, or at least write it down.
Yeah.
Why does your skin color or who you sleep with matter?
Yeah. To describe yourself as your identity comes
Karine
from
Jean-Pierre, black lesbian, she, her. Okay.
Well,
got it.
And ultimately, that's interesting you bring that up, because your sexuality does not define who you are. Your ability to do a job defines who you are.
Yeah.
If how that has ever fused, and granted, I get it.
The party of civil rights, says that we were the party of civil rights. They've taken what MLK Jr. has promised to deliver in his march and completely flipped on its head. It wasn't about the character and content of your skin. It was about your character.
Yeah.
It wasn't about your skin color. It wasn't about what you did before. It was about who you are as a person. And they've taken that and flipped it. No, it's about what kind of color hair I have. That's what it comes down to. Identity politics is what we're living with today.
Well, how I want to be referred as, who I believe I am,
And they're making it criminal in certain states, but we've gotten away from, the actual freedoms that what this day was all about. Obviously, you're free to be who you are, but you can't make it criminal because somebody doesn't want to believe in the falsehoods that you portray.
Well, and I know you've got another clip of someone that actually is kind of flipping something that one of the former great leaders of our country, Martin Luther King, said.
Yes.
But you bring up Independence Day. I mean, Independence Day means so much more than independence means I'm independent from the tyranny of a government that wanted to rule over us.
Mm-hmm.
When I say I am proud to be American, I believe that wholeheartedly. Having spent some time overseas in third world countries, there unequivocally, I am proud to be an American.
Yeah.
There is no other country. The simple fact that more people try to get into the United States of America than pretty much any other country should basically be the lighthouse of why it is that we're the greatest country on the face of the earth.
Yep.
The light is so bright on this nation. The song says it best. America, America, God shed his grace on thee. That word grace is something this country has been practicing with charity for a long time, going back to the founders. Yes, we understand the zeitgeist, the way of the times. That's the word zeitgeist. That was my big $1.25 word there. I threw it out for you. But the zeitgeist of the times, this is how the people lived. This is, we can't go back and change that, how those people lived. However, this document also says that we were formed we were established as a country in order to form a more perfect union.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning we haven't reached perfection.
Right.
So Joe, you're pointing out the obvious, other than the fact that you can't come up with what the thing is, the Constitution. It is obvious that our framers even knew back then that this document Benjamin Franklin is quoted now, and I believe this is the quote. Somebody wrote it down. When he came out of the Second Continental Congress,
Yeah, they
he
asked him.
declared, they were asked, what went on in there? What did you guys do? What did you accomplish? And he said, and of course, I'm paraphrasing all of this, we've given you a republic if you can keep it, because they knew how the hearts of man, and when I say man, of course, I mean all men, as the Declaration says, women and men, that in the hearts of man and women, they are unfortunately led to do things that are inconsistent with all of the precipice, or all the principles, not precipice, all the principles that were put forth in our Constitution and in the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. That man, in of his own, if left up to it, would go back to be what Joe Biden is today, what most governing or most governments are formulated to be on this planet, which is more of an oligarchy, more of an anarchy obviously is led out of democracy into socialism, neo-Marxism, communism, or socialism and communism. So that's how that all flies, and that's where we're at.
Yep. They were flawed men, and most of them who wrote our founding documents and signed off on them were in their 20s, early 20s to late 20s and 30s. A couple of them were maybe a little bit older, but these were flawed men who had brilliant ideas of how to craft a nation, and they were just a millennial aged. This is how deeply intelligent these men were. Yes, did they have the problems outside of their crafting of a nation? Sure, they had a lot of problems. But they built a nation that stood the test of time to this day. Is it in trouble? Is it in progress the other way? Yeah, but we've always been tested, and then we come out on top. There's always been swings of the pendulum, and things have gotten bad, and things can certainly get worse. But we've been able to stand the test of time compared to other empires.
Obviously today, coming into studio, and I appreciate you, Ryan, jumping on with me today for about an hour conversation about the things that should be the most important principles. It's very evident that the world right now is celebrating something that, do they fully grasp how important it is that every year that we have on this planet to celebrate what has transpired to lead us here. We just came through D-Day on June 6th, right? Where men and women, mostly men, but some women, but mostly men, because of the times. Once again, it wasn't that women weren't allowed into combat. It was that women were put into positions of support for the men. There's a reason. I mean, I've got a video that declares, a young lady's declaring the difference in the importance of a man and a woman. I've heard it put forth by many women on the left that, you believe that all women should just be married to men and they should have families and blah, 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 blah. Well, I only believe that because that is what was put forth in the Bible that I read. The Bible,
one of the original commands that God gave mankind.
Yes. So if you don't hold these truths to be self-evident, if you don't hold the truths of Holy Scripture, that's not part of who you are, then that's the beautiful thing about the Constitution. You have the freedom in the United States to be pretty much anything you want to be. So if you want to believe that, if you want to believe that the world is flooding because of the melting of the ice caps, and that eventually this earth is going to be consumed by fire. Oh, well, that's interesting, because you believe the same thing I do.
Yeah.
You believe the same thing I do. No, I mean, I know I'm making gist of that, but you're allowed to believe whatever you want to believe.
Mhm.
You're allowed to practice. That's freedom of religion, not freedom from religion.
Yeah, and can you do that anywhere else on the planet currently?
No.
Can you say publicly what we're doing now on a forum, on the internet, on these platforms? Rumble's been banned in certain countries. YouTube is censoring people. I just sent you a text earlier of a picture on
Yep.
Facebook that our "Let the People Go" documentary link was taken down because I got likes misleading. But America is still the only place on the planet right now that we can have these conversations freely. At least, in a way that no other country could. You'd be prosecuted, you'd be stoned to death in certain countries, parts of the world, and you'd be hung out to dry. They have a state internet, they have a state news, they have a government sponsored list of things you can only see. So where else on the planet people say, "Well, if Trump wins, I'm going to go move to Africa." Okay.
Yeah, you're free to
I implore
do
you to
that.
go to Africa and see the difference between what you think you have here and what they have over there, because I can assure you it's a lot better off here.
You know, the First Amendment is a great one to talk about because I know it gets a lot of, we've been hearing about it over and over again, but it's so interesting that so few words get so convoluted and so misinterpreted. But here's
Mhm.
what it says. Congress shall make no, N-O, simple little word, N-O, no, which means no. Yes means yes, no means no. No law respecting an establishment of religion or
Mhm.
another small little conjunction word, prohibiting the freedom of speech, or I'm sorry, prohibiting the free exercise thereof. My progressive bifocals got the best of me. Or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievances.
Mhm.
See, the power is in the people, not in the government.
Yeah.
Meaning your point is correct. You
Mhm.
have the freedom not to stay in the United States.
Yep.
You have the freedom to do a lot of things. You have a freedom to practice religion. You have a freedom not to practice it. But you can't restrict your displeasure with my right
Mhm.
to practice doesn't supersede it. It just means that you don't have to practice it.
Yeah.
So if I'm holding a prayer vigil, you don't have to pray. In fact, I believe that if you're not comfortable praying, you shouldn't pray. That's between you and God. And
Mhm.
if you don't believe in God, that's between you and you. That was a joke, Ryan. Ryan didn't laugh on that one.
You know, I was so enthralled with what you were saying, I didn't catch the joke there. Um,
Well, you didn't catch the you and you. If it's
yeah,
not, if that's
you and
between
you.
you and God, it's
Yeah.
between you and you. Because who else if it's not between you and you, it's yeah.
Right. Yeah, you don't believe in God, you believe whatever. But,
No.
that establishment of religion thing by Congress, that important part of the amendment gets twisted today, especially in light of the states that want the Ten Commandments back in schools.
Yeah.
And then there's probably gonna be challenges lawfully, for that, but, the Congress shall pass no law respecting establishment. So, I've argued with people on Twitter that Congress never established the 10 commandments.
No.
So therefore, if you and then they try to argue, well, it doesn't mean it's established. Well, what established mean? It means create. It can't create a
Yeah.
state religion. The Ten Commandments by no means were created by Congress, so otherwise we'd have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But it means create. The King of England created a state religion in which if you didn't go to church on their Sunday or whatever, you were criminally held liable. They forced you to church in England, and they forced you to believe what the King of England was all about. That is a state established religion. That is not what the founders intended to create here. So the argument gets twisted, and it drives me nuts when they twist every little word of the amendments. But it's point blank right there. creating no law on the establishment of religion. So their argument is, well, a government can't force a school district to post things.
Yeah.
And you can get legally into that all you want. But the bottom line is, if you look at the First Amendment, Congress didn't make a law establishing anything.
No,
So,
they did not.
You've got prayer for Muslim faith in schools allowed,
Hindu?
but they've made Christians pray outside of school hours at the pole. They've allowed certain, empathy for the Islamic faith, people of that faith, to follow every day that they've had on the calendar in schools. But when somebody wants to post the 10 Commandments, that's treason. And separation of church and state was not a thing in the Constitution. It was a letter penned by Jefferson to a minister on his idea. He didn't necessarily agree wholeheartedly about church and state, being together, but he didn't oppose it either.
Well,
the very idea of separation of church and state wasn't even a thing.
It was a discussion. Once again, obviously it was something that was brought up because people were still, even imagine this, the conversations and discussions we are having here on the DPB show were being held or conversed about back in the days of Jefferson.
Yeah.
Nothing new under the sun. I mean, obviously technology changes. They weren't doing it live on a social media platform.
It was a letter written to a group, a minister in a church, and talking about the very idea and the concept. It was never written into any law. So the idea that you can't have God or teach Bible in the schools, that's not even in the Constitution. You can absolutely, to this day, you can still teach a Bible class.
Your curriculum can. That's right.
Your curriculum might have inclusions with it, and it can have a stated standard, but it does not prohibit any school district publicly from teaching a class on the Bible.
So you may bring up a good point, because this actually happens at many universities, many schools, schools that will teach world religions. And I know of one here close by. They teach world religion, and then their instructor has been given the mandate to teach that all of those religions pretty much lead to the same place. Well, now they are mandating something be taught, which as a private institution, they probably can get away with. As a public institution, meaning you've received public dollars, now you are stipulating that an establishment of a religion, meaning just because you say that you're excluding one religion but including all religions, that's still an establishment, because now you have stipulated that all religions believe the same thing, and that's not true. And you're also putting that person, which is what happened in this scenario that I'm speaking of, that person decided just to say, nope, I'm out, because I can't teach something I don't believe. It's not that I don't believe that these religions exist. They do. I can historically prove that these faith traditions or these religious sects have been ongoing for hundreds, thousands of years. Unfortunately, what they believe is not the truth.
Yeah.
Because what I believe is there's only one truth. And that's what Jesus said. I am the truth. I am life. I am the way. No one comes to the Father but except through me. Well, that's a declaration, not of necessarily independence. It's a declaration of non-independence, meaning that there is no way to the castle. There is no way to the heavenly kingdom unless you enter through the gate. And I am the gatekeeper. I am the gate. And there's only one way to the Father, and that is through me. Now, knowing that, this is where people get upset. Our founding fathers, that's the biblical principles that we believe in as Christians, as Jewish, Judeo-Christians, seeking most of our guidance from the Old and the New Testament. We believe that the document itself, this whole Constitution, was formulated on Judeo-Christian principles. Now, that's the disconnect, right? Because
Mhm.
you want to read things because they did provide within the context of these articles, these amendments,
Yeah.
the ability for you to have an escape clause. So, no, you don't have to believe in anything you don't feel comfortable believing in,
Mhm.
especially if it deals with Christianity or
Right.
Judaism.
And then there's
Um,
that but, right? But you don't have a right to stop somebody else from believing that or even talking about it. That's the other kick to that.
you cannot, you know, you have the God-given right. You have the God-given right to argue and dispute everything that's in this Constitution.
Mhm.
That doesn't change the Constitution.
Right. I will stand here and support everybody's right to speak their beliefs. Whether I
Yes,
agree with them or not, but I will
yes.
fight to the day to my deathbed to make sure they can say it.
And that's what Independence Day is about. You are independent. You're an independent thinker. The blood that was shed on every battlefield across this globe was shed for you. It was shed for everyone because all means all.
Mhm.
When we talk about God shed his grace on you, that's what grace is. It is the ability to give you the openness and the willingness to accept what is in here or not to accept it. And when you don't want like what it says in here, there's actionable ways
Mhm.
of changing this document.
Yep, you've gotta get support, and there's a process for that. You don't
There
like
is.
something that is written in the Constitution, and you don't like something Congress passed, get support to make the change.
It
That's
has
really as simple as it is.
it has been amended. It's not
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I believe will be happening here soon and very soon. My friend Scott Murphy wrote this book. You know, he'll tell you that he really didn't write it because it took many people to come around him. He just
Mhm.
put forth some ideas, and it later ended up in a book called The Term Limit Revolution.
Mhm.
And there's something called Article 5, a Convention of States.
Yep.
And I believe the Convention of States is something that is coming down the pipe,
Yeah.
and it is going to happen, I believe, sooner than later, that we are going to see that term limits are put into our country. Do I believe in term limits? By all means, because
Mhm.
once again, the founders were sharp enough to realize that if men and women were left up to their own minds and abilities and their ways of doing things, that eventually you would see them fall back into a form of government that
Yep.
wasn't what this country was meant to be.
Can you think of 56 individuals today that you would be able to trust to write a document as great as the Declaration of Independence? I mean, I can't even think of maybe 5, let alone some of the letters of known names that signed on to that document. 56 individuals signed on to the Declaration of Independence.
Well, in the first 5 that you were talking about, you challenged me earlier before we jumped uh,
Mhm.
on live, that there were 5 individuals who took the Declaration and presented it to the Second Continental Congress.
Yep.
Those 5 were Jefferson,
Mhm.
uh, Franklin,
Yep.
John Quincy
John
Adams.
Adams.
John
Yep.
Adams, not John Quincy Adams.
Yep.
Quincy Adams was his son.
Yep.
Shepard
Sherman, Roger
Sherman.
Sherman,
Who?
Roger Sherman, and
Roger
then
Sherman
Livingston
and
was the last one.
Livingston.
Mhm.
That Livingston was the last one. I'd like to know more about Sherman and Livingston.
Yep.
That's going to be my homework. I am going to read into Livingston and Sherman because we've heard enough about John Adams,
Mhm.
Thomas
Yeah, there were
Jefferson,
prominent leaders
and
that were part of the main founding, but there were other anonymous people that were just as instrumental getting these documents put into place.
well, and isn't it amazing that we do not even really have days of recognition for the remaining founders of our Constitution who sacrificed it all,
Mm-hmm.
you know, their fortune, their property, you know what I mean? You know the
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, yeah.
What am
You
I
know the
trying to say?
thing. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I read a little bit about some of the founders, that what they did with their ideas, what they did with their estates and their families. I mean, some of them were just as ridiculed as the disciples were after the death of Jesus. They
Yeah.
were not maybe murdered or maimed in the same way, but they lost their estate, they lost their
Their
family.
sacred
Yeah.
honor,
Yeah. The
their
British and the people who
fortune.
disagreed with what they were doing came after them. I mean, they put their lives on the line.
I think that's how it goes. I didn't mean to disrespect what I knew, but I was kind of being off the cuff there with the Joe Biden thing. But it's sacred honor. The founders sacrificed their life, their property, and their sacred honor. They put it all in the line. When that's what sacred honor.
Freedom.
Yeah.
That's what they created. Now, somebody else talked about a story. I've got a clip of this. So I don't remember who was the original storyteller in this, but someone, when she was very young, talked about freedom.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to have 4th of July, we have to talk about this profound story of our great literate vice president and her story on freedom. If you recall, she told this, I think, probably on the campaign or even early on when she was a senator, I think. But this was on Maze Moore shared this clip yesterday, just as a heads up.
Is this the one where she has?
Yeah. So the original story, as I'm joking with it, is Martin Luther King Jr. and he shares his personal story of when he was little, but they'll never criticize Harris for stealing it, of course. So I'm gonna pop this up here. So we've heard this before, I think. Let me see which one it is. That one. Okay. Here is the very lovely, very articulate Kamala Harris.
Witness this, as I write about in the book, from my stroller's eye view. And there's a funny family story about how, so my mother's marching with the extended family. I talk about like Aunt Mary and Uncle Freddie in the book. And she would tell the story about how, so they're marching. And this is back when strollers didn't really have armrests and seatbelts. So they're marching away and, shouting and all of that. And then I think it was my Uncle Freddie, looked down and looked in the stroller, which was empty, and said, "Where's Kamala?" And apparently they left me like a block behind. I'd fallen out the stroller. There you go. And then my mother would tell a funny story about like one day she fussing and so I'm fussing and fussing. It's much cuter when she would tell the story, but she'd say, so then she would look down at me and, Kamala, what do you want? What do you want? And I looked back up at her and I said, freedom.
And there you have the Kamala cackle at the end.
The
freedom.
Yeah.
So that was Kamala Harris, our lovely vice president, stealing a story from, I believe, MLK Jr. That was his
because
story.
I thought that was, if I recall, that was his story.
And it's come out over the years since then, but nobody really made it a bigger deal than what it was. But this is who these people are. Joe and Kamala are notorious for stealing other people's work.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's amazing.
I remember that story being told by Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And so when you had shared that, this goes to show you that the imposters, I think I put that up on the scripture, actually refers to this in the darkest of times. The imposters are going to continue to gravitate towards the dark, and the people of the light will continue to obviously exude the light. I would have to go to my Facebook page to pull that up, but it was, speaking of that, before I do that, I want to add this to the stage because I think it's critical that we understand, as I mentioned before. I will get to my biblical quote, but this, I think I would like to, before we run away and run out of time here today, I want to make sure that I present this because Ryan and I both have seen this. This was out there on many social media platforms, but it's this unbelievable accounting on the Sage Miller. Is it Sage Miller is the name of the
Sage
scout?
Steele. Yeah, she was an
Sage
ESPN
Steele. Sage
uh,
Steele. Yeah.
correspondent for years. Yeah.
Sage Steele. Sage Moore. I know I've got more names in my head, but Sage Steele, thank you for
Yeah.
correcting me.
Yeah.
She's the one who was interviewing both Byron Donalds and Wesley, not Wesley Hunt. I just
Wesley
drew a
Hunt.
blank.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I got it.
It
See,
is.
I'm
You got
pulling
it.
these names up, and
Jackie, where's Jackie?
where's Jackie? Are you there? Oh, Jackie's dead. But this is powerful because
Yeah.
I'll set the stage for it. Wesley Hunt, Congressman Hunt, is telling of his recollection of being at war, negotiating during the Trump administration, negotiating with the Taliban, and basically declaring how it is that we were going to act as a free country, as an independent nation, as the land of the free, the home of the brave. And here's his recounting of a story about Donald J. Trump in the midst of these negotiations with some of these people that have no other vision of the world than to destroy America. But here it goes.
Trump story. This is my number one favorite of all time. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Sure did.
Do you know for 18 months, not a single American was killed in Afghanistan?
Sure did.
That's the definition of strength. That's what I'm talking about. And so you could imagine that kind of sentiment being around the world. If we have an embassy in another country, no one's going to touch it because they're going to be fearful that they'll get a Moab on their head. That's how President Trump rolls. This is the opposite of strength. This is the definition of weakness. And so now we're being feasted upon by other countries when our embassies are there because the Americans aren't going to do anything about it and they don't want us there anyway. But the point of us having an embassy there and the point of us having sovereign American soul is to be able to keep an eye on the world to a certain extent, to have that presence. But you can't have that presence when you have feckless leadership.
Amen, amen, amen. You know what? I do want to jump back and grab that scripture if I still have time, and if I don't get to it, I'll remember it for next show. But thank you. I threw it up there. John Peterson and Kat Peterson. Yes, the Peterson twins. Believe it or not, Kat has a twin. Did you guys know that?
I did. Yeah.
I knew that. And here it is. He has to, obviously, he put in there twins, which wasn't spelled correctly. But I'll get that scripture up if we don't get to it today. But the reason, sharing that is near and dear to my heart, especially here on Independence Day. And the reason that we can declare ourselves a free country. I hit my cord. Sorry. I'll get back on. Don't you worry.
We can still hear you. We can still hear you.
You can still hear me. There you go. I hit the button.
Yeah.
But the reason that I play that Wesley, I was going to call him Wesley Snipes. That's why I had to correct myself because I called him Wesley Hunt.
Oh my gosh.
Wesley Snipes, not even close to Wesley Hunt. But anyhow, the reason I play with Wesley Hunt in that video with Byron Donalds and Sage Steele is because that depicts where we currently find ourselves as a nation in duress, a nation in decline, as Trump pronounces. And knowing that I have a son-in-law that is going to be put in a country that, granted, Kuwait isn't the bastion
Right.
of Al Qaeda or anything. It's the
Mhm.
terrorist. It's not a terrorist nation, but it's still in the Middle East, and
Mhm.
it's a hot zone. And those people are up in arms. And at any time, those leaders from other countries are very versed in what took place last Thursday on the world stage.
Yep.
They saw Joe Biden. Wesley Hunt's example of the type of leader Trump was. Can you imagine sitting with these people wherever this meeting was, the Taliban? These are people who where the Romans in Jesus's time were unequivocally the masters of destroying people's lives, of
Yep.
corporal punishment, of bringing the fires of hell down upon people. The Taliban, they are specialists. They are masters in terrorism. To be in a room like that and to have your president, your leader of the free world,
Mhm.
tell them not one hair is touched. And if so, I'm going to kill you.
Mhm.
And here's the proof. The Taliban guy probably is going, oh, okay, I can hide in the mountains and do all these things. But to take a picture of his home out of his pocket and to throw
Yep.
it on the table, I mean, you can't make this stuff up in
Yeah.
a movie. This is the kind of leadership that establishes what, I find it something interesting too. I know I'm going on a few tangents. Isn't it amazing how much Trump refers to George Washington, to former leaders, Thomas Jefferson?
Mhm.
He is constantly, for those of you that think Trump isn't a very smart person, it's amazing his grasp of history.
Yep.
Obviously, if you don't understand where we've been, how do you know? How can you define where we are? And then how can you define where we're going? That's what I love about Trump. Go ahead. You were going to say.
Oh, that kinda sounded like Kamala Harris when she says we need to be unburdened by what has been. That was pretty good paraphrasing. What can be unburdened by what has been. That was
What
really
has
good,
been,
Kamala.
yeah, I saw that. I saw that little ditty about her
Yeah, that was
repeating
really good.
that.
Actually, you said it better than she did. That was a much better wording of what she was trying to say. You said it better. So I think
Yeah.
you should actually cut this out of the video and use it as a clip, and it would probably go side by side with her really well.
Well, but that's the thing. That's the thing, Joe. This
Yeah,
is
gotta
what Trump
understand
was.
where we've coming from to
That's right.
know where we're going.
The document, historical document, and what those people were working on is where we are today. Yes, we've gone through many toils, dangers, and snares. We've come through so much, but we've come out of it. And
Mhm.
the vision that Trump has for America and for the future, for as many years as we're here on God's green earth, the future that Trump has painted to make America great again. People say, well, when was America ever great? Joe Biden was even saying that, basically by, making the statement that Jefferson never realized it. This person never realized it. Well, no, it's make America great again. Greatness is something that we renew day by day. So when we make America great again, it's pointing back to when America had experienced greatness. You
Mhm.
don't think America's experienced greatness? Well, I challenge you to go out and go through the times of history. Whether it's the amount of capital that we poured into helping other countries, whether it's leading the way in exploration beyond this earth, whether it's in science, whether it's in education. There are plenty of times when America has been great, and we've seen that greatness. We know that greatness. And, there's no question about it. Historians always don't get it right. It's man trying to give their interpretation or their perception of what transpired. But that's the ability for us to challenge it. And I'm never going to challenge this document without having an idea of what this document says.
Mm-hmm.
You can't challenge the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights if you don't know what it says.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's anything I can share with you, get a copy of it. You have a phone. Most of us do.
Yep, I've got the Constitution app.
You can get the Constitution app.
Yep.
You also have David Shostokis, my friend, Constitutional Soundbites. If you'd like a copy of David Shostokis's books, they're out there. He does a great job of breaking it down into little pieces. But my point being this, how can I refute something if I don't know it? And I can't. The latest is the Supreme Court's ruling on different constitutional articles and amendments.
Mm-hmm.
And what they are there to do isn't to rewrite the Constitution.
Yep, it's not to make you feel good.
They're there to call balls and strikes. What was intended by our founders? What were the originalist ideas behind this document that has withstood many, many years through wars, world wars, civil wars, and yet we are still here. And I am still proud to be an American and will always be proud to be American because there is no other place on this earth like America. Ryan, hey, I appreciate Ryan coming
Absolutely.
in on a holiday. We are at an hour. Yes, I didn't anticipate that many people are probably tuning in going, what? Those guys went live on Independence Day?
You betcha.
If you weren't here at the beginning of the show, I'll just briefly give you this as we're leaving. It's easy to have the conveniences and the luxuries of freedom. But all of those freedoms that we have and possess came at a cost. People sacrificed in so many different ways, and some sacrificed it all. And all is the all. They gave their lives so that we could have the celebration of Independence Day, so we can have the celebration of making America great again. Hey, I appreciate all of you. Once again, thank you for always liking, subscribing, tuning in to the DPB show with Ryan Mack. You can catch Ryan Mack's show at the Ryan Mack Show. That's YouTube. Go on over there at Rumble. Is it Rumble too? Rumble, YouTube.
Yep. Rumble, Facebook, YouTube,
Yeah.
X, everywhere. Yep.
Just Google Ryan Mack Show.
Yep.
And you can see Ryan. But until Tuesday, which seems like maybe a week away, even though it's shorter than a week, we are going to be back. We're going to be locked and loaded and ready to go because we're at a precipice. I used that word earlier and in the wrong place, but we're at a point in time when we truly stand in a position where we can lose the very freedom that our nation was founded on. I know you don't want that. I don't want that. What I want for you is the love of Christ. Continue to seek and to be guided by such love. Until Tuesday, I bid you a farewell. All right. Now I got to figure out how to turn on the alarm, set the alarm here at Wilbur.
Yeah.
I've never had to set, I've always had people here. So I'm going to go and set the alarm.
Is it still live? I don't think you clicked it off, or is it delayed?